विवेकानंद सूरे सच्चित् सुख स्वरूपाय स्वामिने भावहारिणे. Their devotees, friends, admirers, children, respected Swamijis and Honorable Consul General, the moment we think about the Parliament of Religion, we remember Swami Vivekananda. Without him, we cannot think of anything else. So, we will have a beautiful program over here. Balabhadranandaji Maharaj, please usher him over here. Please come. Swami Balabhadranandaji Maharaj is the Assistant General Secretary of the Ramakrishna Mountain Mission, and he is in our headquarters, Belur. He was visiting Canada and USA, and today is his last day. Immediately after this program, he will go to catch the flight back. Balabhadrananda. May I request the Consul General, Mr. Shomnath Ghosh, to come and on the stage, please. Shomnath. To come and sit at the side. The Swami is from Canada, Toronto. Now I request your very favorite Swami, Swami Tyaganandaji Maharaj. So friends, we are very happy, you can see the blooming birds all standing over there with the beautiful color that reminds us all about India, the excellent country, beautiful country. And they are from the Maharashtra Mandal, I think. They are from the Chicago Marathi Vidya Mandir.
Adashto
So friends, you know, we'll be discussing a call to conscience defending freedom and human rights from different aspects. And they have started the tune, Vedanta, that is in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Thank you. Thank you. Now I will be inviting our Consul General of India, Sri Somnath Ghosh. So he had a schooling in Ramakrishna Mission in India, Purulia, and also in Narendrapur. And after that, he did his masters from Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. He was the ambassador of Tajikistan and Mongolia, Bangladesh, and he was working in Moscow, Brussels, and European had the connection with all those. And mostly he spent time in Central Asia. Prior to joining the Consul General of India in Chicago, which is controlling the 9 states of America, the Consul General, he was having the wonderful international cooperation work in the Ministry of Defense in India. In that capacity, he has been closely engaged with USA, Russia, France, UK, other major nations, and India's neighborhood on the critical political issues. Ambassador Ghosh speaks Bengali, Hindi, English, and Russian. So he lives with his wife and 2 beautiful sons. Mr. Ghosh, please. Freedom and human rights.
Namaskar, Dhanyabad, thank you, Maharaj. Swami Balabhadrananda, revered Swami Balabhadrananda, revered Swami Kripamayananda, Swami Tyagananda and Swami Satmananda, those who are on the stage, I see some of them elsewhere, revered monks of the Sri Ramakrishna Mott and Mission Order, distinguished guests, ladies, gentlemen, children. It's really incredible that the teacher, actually the second monk from that side, you see, he was a very severe teacher of us in our hostel. I'm embellishing a bit. He was not severe, he was one of the kindest. So he was there, and Swami Satmananda ji joined after a few months. I left Purulia Ramakrishna Mission.
He was lucky.
In a way, they all are my teachers, my gurus. I learned a lot from them. And today I want to tell you from Government of India perspective how we see human rights and freedom. Of course, in a short span of time I cannot do justice to such a large and expansive issues, but it is important to understand that what I am talking is regarding the world's largest country in terms of population today, world's largest democracy, and one most diverse country. So it's important to understand what is our point of view, and I'll argue that it worked. So my sincere thanks and gratitude to Swami Satmananda ji, who has taken this special initiative and reflections on freedom and human rights from an Indian perspective. Both the venue and time of such discussions are significant. 130 years ago, while introducing Hinduism to the World Parliament of Religion in Chicago, this very city, Swami Vivekananda said, and I quote, "I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance," unquote. Sorry, I continue the quotation, the next sentence. "We believe not only in universal These simple yet profound ideas on which world's oldest religion is based upon can explain why, despite unimaginable poverty, underdevelopment, ignorance, and socio-political challenges, India could adopt a supremely successful secular constitution and flowered into a stable and largest democracy on earth. With diversity that would be daunting for any other country. Today, as we mark the 75th anniversary of the Declaration of Human Rights and the 30 years of Vienna Declaration and Program of Action on Human Rights, it is imperative to understand the civilizational basis, and I underline this word, civilizational basis, on which India has developed a democracy. We also need to understand how India protects and promotes human rights as envisaged in the Declaration of Human Rights and all faiths that is part of that declaration. Swami Vivekananda's words are important to understand the root of the idea of equality in India. Ladies and gentlemen, dear moms, one of abiding messages left by Swami Vivekananda is that all individual is potentially divine. I would argue that this traditional India's Upanishadic views of the individual as part of the divinity does lead to the whole set of human rights that we have adopted today in the modern society. Whether it is equality before law, or the fundamental belief that all humans are born free and equal, whether it is right to life or freedom of movement and speech, all seem to be mutually consistent once we accept that each individual is a speck of the same divinity. As a founder member, India actively participated in drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And as it happened, it was led by Eleanor Roosevelt, and the Indian participation were both main participants were both ladies. I'm talking of before 1945, a time when we were still under British rule. It came naturally to India as the declaration embodied India's civilizational ethos, democratic values, and contains in it the essential edifice of Constitution of India, which guides 1.4 billion people with incredible variety of languages, faith, ethnicities, traditions, and ways of life. You can hardly find another country where nearly 80% or over a billion of people follow a particular religion, and yet the country adopts for itself a secular constitution, which does not only not proclaim any state religion, but also treats all religions as equal. There are few nations on earth where religious freedom is so deep and extensive and expansive as in India. India is home to one of the largest and fastest growing Islamic population, which is about 200 million. Those who do not know, I may add here that world largest Islamic population is in Indonesia, and on the second largest, probably in some months Pakistan is higher and in some months we are higher. We have 11 out of every 100 Islamic population on this earth. And we are home to some of the greatest school of thought, some of the greatest architecture, some of the most beautiful and profound that came out of that faith. Islam cannot be thought, even imagined without India. Christian population of about 32 million, Sikh population of about 24 million, Buddhist population of about 10 million, our 5.6 million Jains, and 60,000 Parsis, those who are followers, those who are worshippers of fire, Zoroastrian, who are almost erased out of earth. They have hardly any trace now in Iran. There are some villages still. We have 60,000 of them. All are essential and inalienable part of Indian society. While minority population in some of India's neighborhood have drastically gone down since 1947, the year we won independence, the percentage of religious minorities in India has grown consistently since the independence 77 years ago. By all statistical indicators among largest countries, India is one place where religious minorities are least discriminated and they enjoy equal access to education, health, political participation and other opportunities. Yes, opportunities are still limited for 1.4 billion people. There is poverty, there is despair, but that is so in all community. It is not with minority alone. Ladies and gentlemen, revered monks, India enjoys an incredible diversity in terms of languages too. We have, if you don't know, about 300 languages which are script, different languages, who claim themselves to be different languages. While we use English and Hindi for use of at the federal level and for communication with the outside world, some people find it difficult to believe that India has 22 official languages and far more variety of languages and colloquial versions, which are outside the mandated constitutional schedule. India is an example of peaceful coexistence and mutual respect by different linguistic groups. Size of some are bigger than some nations. Ladies and gentlemen, this week we have celebrated the 77th anniversary of independence. In 1947, India was one of the poorest countries with literacy rate hardly over 10%. Belying doubts, India not only survived as a democracy, India has overcome hardest of the challenges, primarily because of a unique constitution that I have mentioned of. India's constitution is essentially inclusive of all people, all sections, and is firmly based on human rights. Participation of all diversities of people and strict adherence to the democratic polity are fundamental features of India's polity. We are proud that India today is the world's largest democracy, most vibrant, inclusive, with competitive elections at every level, from village to the federal government. India's vibrant media, proactive civil society have proved extremely important in preservation of human rights and good democratic practices. India enjoys a robust constitutional and legislative framework for protection of human rights, the civil and political rights, progressive realization of economic, social and cultural rights that Constitution of India guarantees are consistent with UN Charter and Declaration of Human Rights and international conventions to which India is a party. I would like to point out here that the Supreme Court of India has held in one of its judgment, quote, any international convention, they made conventions related to rights, consistent with fundamental rights and in harmony with their spirit, must be read into these provisions of our law and constitution, to enlarge the meaning and content thereof, to promote the objective of constitutional guarantees. Indeed, our independent, proactive and progressive judiciary has interpreted laws and our constitution in such a manner that human rights have got the widest possible humanistic meaning in words and in spirit. India's institutional framework is robust for protection of rights. India has powerful national and state level human rights commission for women, minorities and certain socio-economically disadvantaged castes and tribes. Our legislative bodies and executive work hard on necessary amendments and repealing of obsolete colonial legislations to keep our constitutional and legislative ecosystem up to date and effective as time and society changes. Ladies and gentlemen, revered monks, human rights are not sustainable in an environment of poverty, ignorance and deprivation. Recognizing this reality right from the beginning of our republic, India invested in economic progress, elimination of poverty, education and health. while conceding that there have been rooms always for improvement, the extraordinary public services provided by Government of India are perhaps the greatest contribution to protection of human rights. India acknowledges the right to work and the right to food. These are very important. Both right to work and right to food, we have interpreted these as human rights. India is one among few countries where there are pioneering legislations such as National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme and National Food Security Act. During different periods of COVID-19 pandemic, Government of India and the states provided free food support to 800 million people. Governments also provided direct financial support to more than 445 million citizens from the economically vulnerable sections, without any discrimination based on religion or ethnicities, or for that matter, any identity. Government took initiative for production and administration of over 200 billion doses of vaccine, COVID vaccine, saving possibly millions of lives. Over 270 million doses of COVID vaccines were sent free of cost or at just development cost to around 100 countries during the pandemic. Nothing can be more important than protecting the rights to life. India's extraordinary contribution by way of vaccines and other means to counter pandemic should be seen and remembered in the context of right to life. Inclusion and participation by all sections of population is the best guarantee against discrimination. India has a pioneering public digital infrastructure for good governance and for realization of sustainable development goals. India's public service delivery is scaled up through the use of a unique biometric identity system. We call it India Stack, and I invite everyone here to read about India Stack, commonly known and reflected through our Aadhaar card system, which has revolutionized the concept of public service delivery to hundreds of millions of people while strictly respecting their individual personal information. The India Stack system has now raised interest in other advanced countries. Of latest two are converted are France and Singapore. They want to introduce, they are studying our system. India's 1.16 billion telecom every month is increasing. 1.3 billion unique biometric identities through Aadhaar. More than 460 million newly opened bank accounts. The world's largest health insurance scheme, known as Ayushman Bharat, are all global benchmarks for most efficient and cost-effective public services at the largest possible scale that you can imagine. Ladies and gentlemen, revered monks, 75 years after the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted, there is an increasing feeling that sustainable development are essential for preservation of human rights. And this comes from the depth of Indian civilization, the spiritual value that we have cherished over millennia. As I have already mentioned, the depth and scale of India's socio-economic journey since the year of independence of 1947. It itself was an inspiration for the developing world. True to the ethos of India's civilization, which believed in well-being of all, including the flora and fauna. In fact, this reminds me one of the slogans, a few lines that one of our sannyasi used to use during our studenthood, liked very much. And I am just reading that. Sarve Pisukina Santu, Sarve Santu Nirama, Sarve Bhadrani Pashantu, Ma Kaschid Dukh Bhat Bhavet. The rough translation will be, let all be happy, let all be free from disease, let all see auspicious things, let nobody suffer from grief. And today we have, we actually want to translate it into we see a reflection in Sustainable Development Goal, and in that we have seamlessly integrated the SDG goals and localized in our India Agenda 2030, which spans from individual household to local governance to federal level. India's emphasis on the inclusion of all sections of population, everybody's participation, trust and contribution is best reflected in the vision Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Prayas. With everybody, for everybody's development, with everybody's trust and everybody's endeavor. Civilizationally, Indian population always laid emphasis on rights and well-being of all animals, plant, just as on human beings. Whether some of the Vedic suttas or teaching of Buddhism or Jainism, people of India have always been praying for happiness of all. It has never been happiness or well-being or progress of a particular community, particular identity or particular sect. It is therefore natural that the Sustainable Development Goal, which is adopted universally, could be localized easily in our national agenda. A right to sustainable environment is an inalienable part of our overall agenda. India's commitment to become a net carbon zero emitter by 2070 and the goal of attaining green energy capacity of 500 gigawatt by 2030 are indicative of our deep commitment to sustainable development, green environment, which is consistent with our cultural ethos. In all this, high priority has been provided to gender inclusion and empowerment of women. 1/3 of all elected positions in India at the grassroots level are reserved for women. India has by far the largest number of elected women anywhere in the world. We believe that women-led development can best ensure protection of rights of vulnerable sections, including vulnerable genders. India is taking all possible steps to take the constitutional guarantee of non-discrimination and equal opportunities to all genders. Closely connected to women's welfare is government's provisioning of affordable clean cooking fuel to 96 million households from poorer sections to safeguard the health particularly of women and children. Here our American friends, those may have more limited exposure. I must say that earlier the cooking used to be using coal or other means. The smoke coming out that used to really cause a lot of health hazards, leading to sometimes cancer and all sorts of It has been over years, over millennia probably. We have now, just in the past few years, connected 96 million additional households at absolutely subsidized price of cooking gas. Consistent with the SDG goals, the Jal Jeevan, Water is Life mission has extended clean tap water facilities to 78 million additional households. By all measures, these are enormous. Human rights cannot be preserved and promoted in isolation in one country when there are challenges all over the world. Notwithstanding own demand on limited resources, India has extended significant development assistance to 78 nations, which included grants and soft line of credit. India's development assistance by different means are making positive impact in Asia, Africa and far off nations and helping them to defend freedom and for development, which we feel is necessary for preservation of human rights. There is one more issue that India is concerned about, and we have been demanding for adoption of International Convention on Terrorism, because freedom from terror is also a right, and we believe in that. We call upon all countries to resolutely display zero tolerance against terrorism of all types. Terrorism is the most heinous form of violation of human rights since it challenges the very right to life. Human rights cannot be a frozen concept. The scope and interpretation of rights are ever extending. Recently, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the UN Secretary General Mr. Guterres together, they have unveiled a program, Lifestyle for the Environment, a LIFE program. for promotion of sustainable way of living based on values of conservation and moderation in consumption. This is a unique and Indian way of looking at rights of human that extends to generations to come and to the earth we inhabit. Ladies and gentlemen, I will not extend much. I have started with Vivekananda's famous speech. I again, just go back to that. India's fundamental spiritual and civilizational values are important to understand for extraordinary success in creation and development of the largest and most diverse democratic country. It is also important to understand that rights can be creatively interpreted as well as expanded beyond the realm of immediate needs to coming generations as well as all forms of life when you look through the prism of values of eternal India, which called for happiness of all well-being, all living beings. So I hope that these thoughts will be studied and further discussed from the point of view of human rights. Thank you very much and pranam.
Thank you. A lot to know from the wonderful speech about how India is developing. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. And he is very busy. He will be leaving us now because he has to attend another program, another meeting. So thank you very much. Friends, the moment we uttered the word freedom, it was a magical word. And I like the symbol. There are many symbols of freedom. But I like that symbol, but that the no bird, empty bird's cage. The door of the cage is open, nobody's there. That shows freedom. And the freedom, we were all born free. The human beings were born free. But for our own causes, we wanted to be together, and the society was born. And when there is a society, there are rules. And when there are rules, and the misuses of rules, and when the misuses of rules, then obviously we lost the freedom. And when we lost the freedom, again we are going for getting the freedom. So it goes on circling. So economical, political, social, it will go on and on. But long back, they developed another type of idea, the freedom from all the bondages. So the moment we are born, so by some way we are bound. But then they wanted to get idea how to go beyond all these bondages. So they thought, why not develop something by which we can go beyond this? And they developed Vedanta. It's a unique conception, a different angle that you can approach. And when you can free yourself from all, then there's a great joy. Why we need freedom? We need freedom to be happy. And here, the great thinkers, ancient thinkers, they gave us that opportunity to go beyond all bondages. We will be listening from our learned Swamis about that, spatial freedom, how spiritual practices can help us in defending freedom and human rights. I will invite Swami Kripamayanandaji, the head of the Vedanta Society of Toronto, Canada, to give us a light on that.
Good afternoon, friends. My topic today is how spiritual practice helps to defend human rights and freedom. Human freedom is generally regarded as having two dimensions, external and internal. External freedom includes political freedom and social freedom. Internal freedom includes intellectual freedom, moral freedom, and spiritual freedom. All these realms of freedom are generally treated as if they were independent of each other. Swami Vivekananda was the first great thinker to show that all these types of freedom are expressions of a single existential urge for freedom derived from the intrinsic freedom of the Atman or true self. Swamiji showed that religion based on universal principles such as the innate freedom of the self can exert a tremendously liberating influence on the minds of people. Religion, in its true experiential essence, is a constructive force which fosters enlightenment, freedom, progress, and harmony. Swami Vivekananda showed that this view of religion as a liberating and harmonizing force is not a utopian ideal, but an immensely practical proposition. Swamiji was not a speculative philosopher, but a prophet and pathfinder with a new gospel of serving God in man. He called his system of thought practical Vedanta, which was intended to help every person, even the poorest and the most ignorant, in all situations of life, to attain freedom, dignity, strength, and fulfillment. The identification of pure consciousness with mind and body is known as bondage, which is the cause of all suffering. The ultimate goal of life is to break this bondage and attain the freedom of pure consciousness. Thus, freedom is traditional Hindu philosophy. It is an ultimate goal of value. It can be attained only through the great struggle and is means for a few individuals who choose the path of nivritti or renunciation. Swami Vivekananda looked upon freedom as a basic existential urge underlying all life activities. Swamiji illustrates this path by the example of a worm and a locomotive. He says that a locomotive was going through a rail, the iron rail, and there was a small worm. Finding the vibration, the worm crosses the rail and saves itself. Locomotive is bound, huge, powerful, but it is bound on the track. Small worm has the consciousness to and intelligence to protect itself. In that way, the small worm is much greater in expressing its free will, its life-saving capability than the huge and powerful locomotive. Another idea of Swami Vivekananda is that since the individual self is a part or reflection of the Supreme Self, each soul is potentially divine. That is to say, all the knowledge, power, beauty, strength, and glory that we seek outside are already within us in a potential form. These capacities manifest themselves when the obstacles are removed. Swami Vivekananda gives the example of irrigation. There is water flowing in the irrigation channel. As soon as the farmer removes a part of the embankment, water rushes into the field. The urge for freedom that we all feel within is the urge to break the obstacles to the manifestation of the divinity within. As Swamiji has put it, each man is infinite already. Only these bars and bolts and different circumstances shut him in. But as soon as they are removed, he rushes out and expresses himself. So we all are potentially free ultimately. Only obstacles, only bondage is because of ignorance of our true nature. When we understand our freedom, innate freedom, by removing the obstacles of ignorance that create bondage, we experience the freedom of the soul. Swami Vivekananda always said, the music of the soul is freedom. Soul chants freedom, freedom, oh freedom. And that is for every human being. Not the external freedom will be enough. Those are helpful. But we want inner freedom, freedom from ignorance. Swamiji saw that what poor and downtrodden people needed most was a message of strength which would enable them to break the bonds of priestcraft, social tyranny, injustice and exploitation. Swamiji found this message of strength and freedom in the Vedanta. Vedanta should be the message for all, for the masses, for the ignorant, for illiterate, and all will get strength and have the self-confidence, and they will break all the bondage that make them bound. Real freedom can come from the knowledge of our true self. Swamiji also made religion a liberating force instead of being a restraining force. This he did by separating the life-giving, eternal and universal spiritual truths of religion from the non-essential outer forms, and also by separating true religion from social institutions. Spiritual concepts such as divinity of the soul, seeing God in all people, and so on, can liberate the minds of people from fear, hopelessness, selfishness, etc., and bring into existence a new society of enlightened individuals. Liberty is the first condition of growth, says Swami Vivekananda. And so he never advocated a steamroller model of socio-economic reform. The beginnings of socialism had already been made, and Swamiji was aware of it. And he always upheld the freedom of the individual and believed that social problems could be solved in a democratic way by spreading education. He stated, "My whole ambition in life is to set in motion a machinery which will bring noble ideas to the door of everybody, and then let man and woman settle their own fate. We are to put the chemicals together. The crystallization will be done by nature according to her laws." How to have this freedom known, how to realize the intrinsic, innate freedom of the soul, that needs to be done through practice. Practice is important to feel. Always when we see someone, we should see, instead of seeing the human being or animal, we should see the living, powerful soul, divine soul that resides in the heart of everyone. Infinite possibilities, wonderful beauty, that Satyam Shivam Sundaram that lurks from the inside the soul of everyone. We should try to see that, and we should try to behave to others like we are behaving God in human being. That's why Swami Vivekananda said, serve a man seeing God in him. Then is the real service. And that the spiritual practice begins to remove all the obstacles of ignorance from our mind, and the soul then manifests itself. Swamiji said that there is a light in the soul, but that is covered with a dark screen. There is a small hole. Through that hole the light comes. Now that hole has to be made bigger with the spiritual practice, with our behavior, with our friendliness, with accepting everyone, with accepting all the cultures, and making the whole world our own. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, whole universe is our family, all beings are my own reflection. Seeing that is the practice that we need to do. When we do that, all moral and spiritual practice that we perform makes that whole bigger. And the more light of the soul falls, we become aware of our true nature. The more there is selfishness, the immorality, then that hole shrinks and it closes. Then we don't find light anywhere. Sri Ramakrishna quoted that said, renounce everything and practice spiritual discipline for God realization. Renunciation often seems to be very difficult word, as if giving up everything. It is not giving up everything. It is giving up of what that stops us from manifesting our true nature. It's giving up of bondage. It is giving up of ignorance, selfishness. That is renunciation. Renunciation is making the whole world our own. That is true renunciation. I will close with the message of Holy Mother, that Holy Mother, Sri Sharada Devi, the divine consort of Sri Ramakrishna, said, the more we sincerely try to get rid of our egos, selfish desires and other passions through spiritual practices, the more we fill our hearts with love and learn to make the whole world our own. Just like Holy Mother Sri Sharada Devi had said and lived accordingly, then there will be no separation between you and I, and we will be ever free. Thank you
In a very brief way, Swami Kripamanandaji, he gave us how to be free. Now, anything, if I think that I am doing out of my own, there is no stress. But if somebody is asking me to do that, same thing will be stressful. Why he is asking to do it? Now, suppose the husband asks the wife, hey, won't you cook? Why should I cook? But if the wife thinks, I should cook and then make such a wonderful thing that everybody will appreciate, like it, freedom. There is no stress. See, same thing is really, if we apply the freedom in our life, then there is no problem. So otherwise, life is very difficult. The freedom, at the same time, our human rights are there, responsibility is also there. In this country, I have seen and I really appreciate it. You have the freedom and you have the right to listen to music, but inside your room. You should not open the microphone outside to make every neighbor to listen your song, your music. Why? So, along with the freedom comes the responsibility. And what is the responsibility? Feeling for others. And how the feeling for others will come? Through religion, In Mahabharata, it says, the greatest religion is that do that to others what you want from others. We want attention, we want respect, we want love. Give that to others. That is religion. So this is the way, the freedom we have to apply. Thank you, friends. Now, I will request our Swami Balabhadranandaji, who is one of the Assistant General Secretaries of our headquarters. He joined the order in 1976, and then afterwards, he actually worked a long period of time in the Cultural Institute, very famous organization of the Ramakrishna Mission in Calcutta. And he used to write a lot, he used to give talks on all that, and publishing all this. Now he is touring all over the Canada and America. This is the last day, and of course, he has to go quickly. I will request him to give us an idea the role of Ramakrishna Mission defending freedom and human rights. Balabhadranandaji, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. My special thanks, grateful thanks to the monks present on the dais, especially to Swami Ishakmanandaji and Swami Kripamanandaji for their inviting me to Canada and United States and making it possible for me to be present before you on this very important occasion, the World's Parliament of Religions, which is again taking place at the very city of Chicago, where the first parliament in 1893 was held, and in which our Swami Vivekananda participated. There is one thing common among all the four monks present on the dais. We had the opportunity of having the holiest day of our life together. In 1986, we received our vow of monasticism from the same Guru on a single date on the tithi of birth of Sri Ramakrishna. So for me this is a very significant coincidence, and I felt that you would like it if I share this almost secret thing with you. Anyway, my topic is role of Ramakrishna Mission in defending freedom and human rights. Ramakrishna Mission has always stood for freedom and human dignity and human rights in the most comprehensive and truest sense of the terms. And the root of this fact lies in the following three factors. Firstly, it is based on the life and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, who was a born lover of freedom. He had a sharp intellect, strong common sense, keen observations, a pure and simple heart, and of course, an unflinching devotion to God. To make any judgment about any matter, he always preferred to depend on these inner qualities of his rather than to depend on anything else. That is why it was found since his childhood that he would sometimes behave in most unconventional ways. As for example, he rejected the formal education, brushing it aside as mere bread-earning education and not aiming at real knowledge. Similarly, at the time of being invested with the sacred thread, which is a mandatory ceremony of Hindu Brahmin boys, going against all social and scriptural norms, he took his first alms after the specific rites from one low caste man and not from his parents or any Brahmin relatives. When tried to be persuaded, he had said, "I gave her word to this effect. She also loves me like her own son. How can I go back on my word and still remain a Brahmin?" Thus we find that since his childhood, Ramakrishna grew up as one who preferred to live in freedom. The same is true with Swami Vivekananda also, Ramakrishna's foremost disciple. Viveka means conscience. The very meaning of the name Vivekananda is one who finds joy in conscience and whose conscience is fully awakened. He gave Ramakrishna's ideas a concrete shape by forming the twin organizations of Ramakrishna Mott and Ramakrishna Mission. He used to say, "Freedom is the song of the soul. Freedom is the first condition of growth." He lived in freedom and advocated freedom for everyone, everywhere, at every level. That is why he was a great inspiration behind India's freedom movement also. Though India achieved independence 45 years after his passing away. He would say to those around him, "Be free, a free body, a free soul. That is what I have felt all my life. If you dare declare that you are free, free you are this moment." Thirdly, and more importantly, Ramakrishna mission is based on Vedanta, which forms the essence of Hinduism and includes and accepts basic tenets of every religion. Ramakrishna mission is based on Vedanta as experienced by Ramakrishna and interpreted by Vivekananda in the light of Sri Ramakrishna's Vedantic experiences. Vivekananda once said to his disciple Sister Nivedita that Sri Ramakrishna's unique life is the unique method by which Vedanta can be used in the best possible manner for the good of modern humankind. Now, Vedanta at the very first place talks of mukti or freedom as the ultimate spiritual goal, not of heaven or not of even God. It does not deny the existence of heaven or personal God, but does not posit them as ultimate goal. Ultimate spiritual goal, according to Vedanta, is freedom of the soul from the cage of body, mind, intellect, and ego. And on the other hand, Vedanta talks of oneness of all beings, because every being is potentially divine, and on the basis of that divine identity, all are one and equal with each other. So even human right is a smaller expression in the light of Vedanta. We actually are for divine right of oneness, divine freedom. Freedom, when I realize my identity as divinity, then I actually feel real freedom. Ramakrishna, Vivekananda ideas or the Vedantic ideas, they draw our attention to that ultimate goal of freedom and that ultimate right that we call divine right, that we may call divine right. Ramakrishna mission is based on these two basic postulates of Vedanta, which is this freedom of the embodied soul from the cage of body, mind and ego, and the divine oneness of every being. Swamiji once said, Vedanta does not proclaim equality, but oneness. Even equality is a smaller and imperfect expression, because the basic truth ever is oneness, and the idea of plurality presupposes the idea of manifoldness. If I say that these 200 people present here are equal, I have to take into consideration this plural number of 200. Then again, it is true that life will be ever marked by variances. All will not be the same. Some will be tall, some short, some more intelligent, some are not so. Then it may be also like this. Two students, both may be very intelligent, but one's aptitude is in one branch of studies and other's aptitude may be in some other branch. This is the evident fact of life, these varieties or variances. So, in the example that we just cited, that 200 people are equal, the correct expression from Vedantic point of view should be this: one single entity is present before me as 200. As they are all one, so these 200 persons must be equal and they must be treated equally. So this is the Vedantic idea of oneness and equality. Ramakrishna mission, through all its activities, recognizes and practices these basic truths of freedom and oneness of beings. Somehow, each human being carries deep within him or her the memory of their lost freedom, as it were, and an urge for getting back that lost freedom works behind all their activities. This we say, borrowing from Vivekananda's ideas. Vivekananda says, a thief is stealing and a monk is meditating. Both are driven by the urge for freedom. The thief wants to free himself from the bondage of poverty, that is why he steals. But he has chosen a wrong path. His action will not bring him freedom. It will cause him more bondage and sufferings, and he will be delayed to have real freedom. But the monk has chosen the right path and will progress steadily to freedom. So, man's sufferings can be man's sufferings or need or wants can be interpreted as bondage. They are actually outcome of bondages at various levels, and Ramakrishna Mission services are but freedom facilities, we can say. Ramakrishna Mission serves people at physical, mental, emotional, intellectual, moral and spiritual levels. It runs schools, colleges and universities. It runs dispensaries and hospitals, provides food, shelter and medical care to the poor and the afflicted, especially at the time of natural calamities and distress. It provides value education to the youth. It provides spiritual knowledge to everyone who seeks it through its publications and discourses, and it provides all these services irrespective of race, religion and country. Whatever services Ramakrishna Mission offers, by that it offers people some facilities to gain freedom from their immediate states of bondage. But along with their services for their immediate needs, we always keep people aware of moral and spiritual values, so that, like that thief, they do not opt for any wrong path and get delayed. Along with that, we teach also self-restraint and love, so that their attempts to freedom do not obstruct the freedom of others, and they can have the heart to feel that they are enjoying, that if they are enjoying freedom and legitimate rights as human beings, they should also see that others also enjoy the same. Love comes spontaneously from the Vedantic truth of oneness, love and empathy. Because I know it or not, I accept it or not, truth is this, that anybody suffering anywhere is actually me suffering. Anybody happy anywhere means actually I am happy through his or her happiness. But just as oneness is the eternal truth at the core, also, as we have pointed out just now, as oneness is the eternal truth at the core, also inequality or variance is true at the surface of life. That is the sign of life. That variance, in fact, this variance is the sign of life. All will never become equal in beauty, talents, or other qualities of head, heart, and physique. Then, how to reconcile these varieties on the surface with unity at the core in a just manner? Vivekananda has given a solution to this, which naturally Ramakrishna Mission also follows always. The solution is this: there should not be any special privilege for anybody because of these variances. Everybody should be given equal opportunity to prove his or her worth in education, job, and in every respect. Equality must be maintained in granting privileges. Swamiji says, Vedanta does away with all sorts of privileges. Therefore, absolutely there should not be any privilege for anybody. If there should be any special privilege, it should be for those who are lagging behind, but only temporarily till they rise to the level of the mainstream people. Ramakrishna Mission remains committed to this principle in all their service activities, and we have reasons to believe that by following this principle, we serve the causes of human rights at their very roots. Another characteristic of Ramakrishna Mission is its belief in religious harmony. We sincerely believe that all religions are valid paths of teaching the same spiritual truth, so long as some basic requisites like purity, morality, empathy, honesty are not compromised. This truth that all religions are equally valid, leading to the same goal, was first realized by Ramakrishna and first preached to the world at large by Swami Vivekananda at the 1893 Chicago Parliament of Religions. Parliament of World Religions Authorities have rightly mentioned in their website that the 1893 Parliament in which Vivekananda participated marked the beginning of inter-religious dialogue. The outcome is this fact that world's religions are now steadily leaning towards interfaith harmony. When Vivekananda declared at the Parliament of Religions, we believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true, he was actually affording freedom from what he described as sectarianism, bigotry, and their horrible descendants' fanaticism. If I say God's grace and emancipating power is reserved only for one religion, we put limit to God's infinite power. It is like subjects of a country curtailing the power of the king himself. Vivekananda pointed out this fragmented view of God and religions to be wrong and presented before all a better view of religion in terms of universal toleration and acceptance. His oratory, buttressed by the depth of his spiritual experience, made his message convincing. America was a land of freedom. It is ever fond of freedom. So, a free approach to religion, which Vivekananda offered to the American people and which the American newspapers described as wide as the sky, was readily accepted here. An example can be cited here. Even before Vivekananda reached India, though he had then left America for England, a news was published in a New York paper which was reproduced in Indian Mirror. Some 100 educated men and women who were practicing Vedanta were interviewed by that reporter of newspaper. They said, "We now realize that there have been many Christs before. They are all outcome of the eternal principles of Vedanta." They were asked immediately, "Don't you think by this you are moving away from Christ and Christianity?" They said, "Not at all. We feel that we now understand the Prophet of Nazareth and Christianity better than before." I will conclude quoting from Sister Nivedita a few lines on Sri Ramakrishna's universal love. Sister Nivedita writes, "In this man's love, there was no limitation everywhere. His longing was for the salvation of every soul in a whole world. A universe from which one, most significant one, was missing would not have seemed perfect in his eyes. This all-inclusive love is the motivation behind all the activities of Ramakrishna Mission." Thank you.
Excellent. So, friends, I was just thinking, and Swamiji concluded in that, as a freedom and all our defending our rights, everything is possible if you have love. As Swami Vivekananda said, what is God about Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna is Guru? He said, L-O-V-E personified. And that is the God. God is love. From different paths we are going to that love only. If we don't generate love, it is of no use practicing religion. And then unselfishness. Love cannot come without unselfishness. So these two are the wonderful quality. If we, the human being, can develop, then everywhere all people will be happy and they will be making others happy. Now the last speaker with whom we are all waiting to listen to him is our Swami Tyaganandaji Maharaj. The Tyaganandaji is coming from Boston, Vedanta Society Boston. He's an excellent orator and writer, and most of you all know. Tyaganandaji will be giving a talk on defending freedom and human rights in the light of Sri Ramakrishna. So where he concluded, he'll begin from there.
सत्कमय तमसोमा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय आविराविर्महेति रुद्रयत्ते दक्षिणं मुखं तेन मां पाहि नित्यम्. May the divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. The divine consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. One of the advantages of being the last to speak was most of the points that needed to be said have already been said. And so I just tried to summarize a few of the points that could sum up the theme of this panel. Defending freedom and human rights. The phrase, the idea of human rights is old, but the phrase human rights is of relatively recent origin, maybe not more than 70 or 80 years ago. So when we think about human rights, especially in the light of the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, it's important to consider the relationship between rights and duties. And increasingly, if we see now, in the times in which we live, there is a lot of talk about rights. The Bill of Rights, the constitutions of different countries define the rights that we have. But it's time to also wonder whether how many constitutions speak about duties. Can there be rights without duties? Will human right become better if we become increasingly aware of human duties? And the word that gets used in the Hindu tradition on duties is dharma. So one of the ways we see from the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Swami Vivekananda is that the more we go closer to the idea of dharma, not only in the understanding of dharma, but in the practice of dharma in our daily lives, we will not only be able to defend our own rights, but we'll be able to respect and defend the rights of others as well. And it is to establish dharma. That is what the Gita says, that there is a descent of an extraordinary divine being that occurs once every few centuries. Dharma samsthapanarthaya. So, Sri Ramakrishna, many of us all over the world see him as one such special being. Whether we label that being as an avatar or as a prophet or a savior, choose your word. But the idea is, historically, there have been these extraordinary beings which have come down to the planet, be it way back in the form of Gautam Buddha, Jesus, the Prophet Muhammad, the different Sri Ramakrishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We have several names, and in every case we find that they came to stabilize the idea of dharma. because the more we go closer to dharma, then the idea of rights will automatically get defended and protected. One other idea in Sri Ramakrishna's teachings we find is that whenever we talk about freedom, something that earlier speakers have alluded to, is yes, there is political freedom, economic freedom, social freedom, and these freedoms vary to greater or lesser degree in different parts of the world. But it's worth looking within and asking ourselves, how free are we really? Are we free in the complete sense of the term, or we probably experience greater or lesser degree of freedom in the external world, but are we really free from egoism, from selfishness, from jealousy, from the desire to control and the desire to exploit other people, those who are weaker than us? And if every one of us looks in our heart, we will find that there is a lot of work to do of trying to become truly free inside of ourselves. Sri Ramakrishna therefore said that the cause of real bondage, which prevents us from being completely free, is the sense of I, the ego. Now, of course, without the sense of I, no activity, no thinking is possible. But can we somehow liberate this I from these narrow shackles because it has gotten identified itself with all the perishable things of the world? And what Sri Ramakrishna said was, if I can find a way to associate my I with something that is transcendent, someone who is infinite, then my I will become, he used the word ripe, the ripe I as opposed to the unripe I. And once the I becomes ripe, we automatically begin to experience deeper levels of freedom and respect the freedoms of others as well. So even when one other small point that needs emphasis is that while much is said about defending freedom, that defending one's own freedom comes alongside respecting the freedoms of others. We know, yes, it's real that social groupings, whether it is caste or it is race or it is class, in different societies the world over, people make groups, and then there is a thing about protecting the interest of one group, and then in order to do that, there is an exploitation of the weaker groups. This is true with individuals, but it's also true with larger groups as well. So the more associate with the divine, the easier it becomes then to protect human rights and freedom as well. One simple test we all can do is, why is it easy for me to look upon everyone and recognize that all are human beings? Because I see myself as a human being. How I see others is directly related to how I see myself. If I see myself as a human being, I'll be able to see others as human beings. Now, a lot of religions, in one way or the other, emphasize the idea that God is our father, God is our mother, that we are all God's children. We read about it, we hear about it again and again and again. And yet, why is it so difficult that when we go out onto the street and meet someone, say, here is a child of God standing in front of me, that all these people sitting in front of me are children of God? Why don't we remember it? The reason I don't remember it is because I'm not able to remember that I'm a child of God myself. So the more I recognize that I'm a child of God, the easier it will become for me to recognize that others are children of God. The more I'm able to respect my own innate divinity, my own freedom, the easier it will be for me to then respect the freedoms of others as well. So that is one central message that comes to us in the lives of all of these great prophets and saviors of different religious traditions, that just like charity begins at home, everything begins at home. So before we try to reform other people, we should all look in our own hearts and try to reform ourselves. In fact, it might be even better to say, for some time, stop trying to make the world better. I think if everyone spends some time and energy in trying to make themselves better, the world will automatically become better. So it's good to kind of look within, try to evolve oneself, and to the extent we are able to evolve and become better human beings, we'll be able to help our fellow human beings as well. So there are lots of ideas to see, and clearly not everything can be discussed in a short gathering like this, but I will encourage all of you to consciously think about these subjects. Whatever reading you may have done and will do in the future, try to see that ultimately the test of our growth is not how much we know, but how much we have grown. It's not about comparing ourselves or competing with somebody else. It's actually comparing ourselves with our own selves. Am I today a better person than what I was 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago? If I feel I'm a better person now, then some growth has occurred. If I find that nothing has changed, then I need to look within and see that something needs to change in my life so that I will continue to grow and continue to become a better person. So thank you for all of you for coming and paying attention, and this is something that a gathering like this can be very inspiring if we go home even with some 1 or 2 ideas and say, this is something I have learned and this is somehow I will try to live in the rest of my life. Thank you.
Thank you, friends. I thank you, dear devotees. But did I introduce myself? But you'll be knowing, because most of you know, and it is written over there. I'm really, really thankful to all of you. You have come over here, you are sitting and listening. And the last, as the Swami Tyagananda Ji Maharaj said, let us develop ourselves. And then everything will be all right. You know that long back in Bengal, there's a very famous writer, Shankar, and he was mentioning about his school days. He said, when they used to sing the national anthem, someone used to sing very badly, and that used to mark the whole music. Then one day, the music teacher came and asked him, hey, you stop, and everything became all right. The music he was creating problem. So we have to be careful and whether I'm perfect or not. And what is that perfection? Again, in the Mahabharata, whatever you like, you have to give it to others in that way. The respect, the love, the attention, the services. I want, when I am visiting someone, that they must pay attention to me. And when someone is visiting me, am I also doing the same way? Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna said, Bhaktir Jatani. There is no, you are all same. Maybe you are highly educated, maybe very well placed in the society, very rich, very learned, whatever. But the moment you come to that God, to the temple, and then you are, I should remain happy. And how can I? In a positive way. Whatever is happening, oh, this is for me, I liked it. You know, the other day, I was noticing the Swami Balabhadrananda Ji is a very good friend of ours, and but he's our boss, you know. And whatever the people were giving him, offering him, and he was telling, I like it. Poverty, unthinkable. I heard about poverty, but never experienced that poverty like that. There is no food, there is no good place to live, and oh my God, there's the different of snakes and other things were there. It was very, very difficult. Now, the first day I was thinking, why me? Then the next moment I thought, oh, Swami Vivekananda said, Thank yourself because you have been chosen for that job. The God has chosen me to accept that challenge. Next moment I was happy with the same environment, same challenges, same problem. Swamiji has chosen me. He could choose anyone, but he thought I am the right one. I should get 8 years and the best period of my time. And we were really very happy, positive way, and depending on God, believing God. We will conclude by saying that Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna said, in Bengali he said, promising he said, Mairi bolchi, Ishwarke dekha jai, kotha bola jai. I am promising God is there. You can see God, you can talk to God. How? By loving others, by seeing God present in others. And if we can do that, that will be the best way in defending freedom and also defending the rights. Thank you, friends, once again. Will you please join me and repeat after me Shanti 3 times? Om Shanti. Om Shanti. 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 Let be peace everywhere. Let everyone be happy. Peace, peace, peace unto all. Friends, just to remind you that tomorrow we will have a wonderful meeting with another two Swamis and myself will be there. I'm sorry that our young brother is a very good speaker and very, almost all of you know Swami Sarvapriya. Something happened, he couldn't come, doctor didn't allow. But we will be there in our Hall of Consciousness. We are going to meet tomorrow, 19 at 11 a.m. Please come over there from 11 to 1. There will be question answers also, and then we will have a lunch. Then we will go to the Lemont Hindu temple, and afterwards, Sunday again, in our Homer Glen Ashram, a little away from here, 1 hour drive from here, Homer Glen Ashram, again will be, the Swamis will be discussing about Swami Tyagananda Ji, Swami Kripamananda Ji, they will be there. We'll be discussing about the spiritual, the different things. And again, the prasad as we call, lunch will be there. And you will like those, the very tasty lunch. So please come. That will be wonderful. And, yeah, please.
I'm sorry, where is the Hall of Conscience?
Hall of Consciousness is a home of harmony. It is in Irving Park, the Killer Avenue. You will get the card and you will give it.
Hindu temple program today.
A Hindu temple program on 19th evening. 19th evening there will be Hindu temple program. That is in Lemont. Thank you very much, and this is the last time, last moment of the Parliament of Religion. That movement which started over here in America is a great country. 10,000 years, if it is a civilization of the humanity, the first time the 10 major religions, they sat and discussed on this. And that happened in Chicago. As a Chicagoans, we are all proud of it. Thank you very much.